Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Digital Aftermarket Services. Today we will be discussing the best practices for successful development and operationalization. So my name is Sander van der Meer, and I'm working with OEM business development in Cognite. With me today is Jake Bauma, who is heading up our smart maintenance team. Welcome, Jake. In my role, I'm working with the OEM clients and prospects, basically identifying value opportunities and for digital aftermarket services, developing and implementing strategies and roadmaps. Key focus is really on how we approach this is creating value for both OEMs and their clients. In order to translate these opportunities into scalable and commercialized solutions, I work very closely with Jake and our partners. So Jake, maybe you can say something about your role and what your team is contributing with.
Thanks, Sander. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Yes, as Director of Smart Maintenance here at Cognite, I'm leading our work in maintenance reliability solutions and the data science teams that work at our customers to realize value from the industrial data that we contextualize and connect in Cognite Data Fusion. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you a few of the things that we've learned in work with some of our equipment manufacturers in building aftermarket services. Back to you, Sander.
All right. So we will be hearing more from Jake later on, but I think now I would like to go a little bit through the outline of our presentation. So today, we will share some insights and talk about what we learned from working with our clients, both operators and the OEMs, basically addressing why, what and how to approach digital aftermarket services. In the introduction part, which we'll spend quite some time on, we will explain the operator or the OEM customer perspective and the ongoing transformation in this space. We will explain a little bit the technological disruption that is happening, the IT/OT gap, data contextualization, the concept of a digital twin, but also, the value opportunities, which really is the starting point and bottom line and key guiding principle. From the operator or OEM market perspective, we will discuss what this means for the OEMs and what kind of challenges OEMs are facing. And in response to that, Jake will take you through our guiding principles and best practices for ensuring successful development and operationalization, capturing and delivering value. And then on the end, we will have a Q&A session, so you can ask your questions now in the dialog box. And then at the end of the webinar, we will address these questions one by one. So from the operator perspective, the uncertainty clearly remains with COVID, the markets, particularly in oil and gas. There is a shift of focus from long-term investments to OPEX and cutting cost, basically focusing on operations. And with that, resilience of operations is really topping the agenda. They're talking about unmanned, low-manned operations, reliability, production efficiency are important areas of focus, automation, remote operations, etc. Digitalization is still an important topic and remains in focus, where we clearly see a shift from, let's say, the larger programs to value-adding use cases. I think we can say that some of the key investments in platforms have been made, and now with virtualization, data warehouse, cloud type of technologies being in place, we see operators now really focus on creating value from the bottom up, solving specific use cases, around automation and remote ops, and cost-saving initiatives around reliability and production. In addition, sustainability is an important part of what the operators are focusing on. A green shift, energy efficiency, really spanning the entire, all the 17 goals, sustainability goals. And partners and suppliers can find opportunities, enabling all these type of objectives. The digital future is really here, and operators are focusing on specific value pools or digital themes, if you like, using data from CMMS systems, condition monitoring, prediction, and risk analysis to plan maintenance better. Production optimization is focusing on combining physics simulators with real-time data and machine learning to optimize production and/or mitigate risk. Giving workers easy access to all relevant information is really a low-hanging fruit by providing mobile devices, and clearly use cases that impact safety and sustainability are in focus, such as energy efficiency, emission reductions, but also removing people from risky environments. I think last but not least, and spanning really all the above themes, is business transformation. So new ways of working with suppliers and partners, new business models, outcome-based agreements, sharing data and benefiting from insights from the experts, the subject matter experts, their suppliers, is an important enabler for the operators in establishing these goals discussed previously. This has already provided significant results, and they really speak for themselves. And here you see some of the key KPIs that our operators are focusing on. And also, with the help of their partners and suppliers. I guess in other words, you could say that digital aftermarket solutions are highly relevant when impacting these specific operational efficiency gains. Uptime of equipment as a result of data-driven maintenance, increased productivity, as part of asset optimization strategies. Reducing people on board, for example, in offshore industries is important. So increasing worker productivity and reducing the number of hours worked, but also, of course, the energy efficiency and increased safety use cases. With regards to business transformation, new revenues opportunities are being created for suppliers and partners. And the operators are working on different incentive-based relationships through performance-based contracts, for example. So, the shift, the digital transformation, or the disruption, if you like, or the opportunity, which is sometimes being described as Industry 4.0, IoT. It really describes the digital opportunity for the industry, and a good way of describing it is to reference it with what happened to the consumer industry. And Google Maps is a great example of this. This is obviously a product that most people know. So Google Maps, for example, collects data from hundreds of sources. It could be road networks from various authorities, commercial suppliers, yourself as a car driver, planes, satellite photos, addresses of shops, timetables for public transport, and they collect all this data and make it available in an easy to understand user interface, which can then be used to solve a number of different use cases. For example, where's the store I want to go to? What's the shortest way to get there by bicycle? When do I need to leave the office to catch my plane? And all this information looks and behaves the same way, regardless of the source it came from. But in addition to making that data available through this user interface, Google also makes this data available through an API in a consistent format, regardless of the source of these data. And this again makes it possible to create new applications and use this map data in new ways, rather than and much faster, rather than if you had to build these applications by scratch. And this is really also the opportunity that's now being offered to the industry. The industry has to date basically remained disintegrated. Data is locked into silos. It's much more complex than maybe the consumer world. But the technology shift that we're seeing now is basically offering the same opportunity to the industry that we have seen being offered to the consumer world during the last decades. So to understand that disruption and what has changed and what is being changed today, I would like to zoom a little bit in on, let's say, how the IT infrastructure in industry has been described. For those of you that have worked with automation, you're probably quite familiar with the Purdue or ISA 95 model, which is really a methodology or a model that describes how the process itself, the assets and the automation systems are integrating with, let's say, the company IT enterprise solutions. The pyramid that you see on the left side here, basically describes the hierarchy with the production process itself at the bottom, then the PLC control systems as level 1, SCADA, HMI, the control room, which is monitoring and supervising at level 2, and then manufacturing excellence systems and business systems such as ERP systems on top of the pyramid. This is really the model of architecture that has driven how IT infrastructures have been deployed into the industry in the last decades. Most of the information has been digital. The analog to digital conversion, I would say, happens between level 0 and level 1, where you have the analog equipment, the analog measurements becoming digital and being consumed by the control systems and the PLCs. And I would say that the OT-IT gap that we have talked about is between level 2 and 3, where data was typically limited to the operator in the control room, but not necessarily easily being integrated further into business and management operations such as MES systems, asset performance management, or ERP. Today, with that new technology, this is of course completely changed, right? So devices are being connected much more directly. I would say that the business applications and business management systems are shifting towards a software as a service model. I think the IT-OT gap is basically disappearing with an ease of integration. The disruption really is in how data is being brought up from the process and being made available for business applications in an environment. This is also enabling, part of that revolution is the bottom-up approach, where traditionally, solutions and applications were developed at an enterprise level and then implemented and integrated. Today, we see that the new technology enables a different way of working, where solutions and services are basically being decoupled from the infrastructure. We're basically bringing real-time data from the process to level 4 in this traditional architecture. There's a focus on use cases, as also the operators are focusing on solving specific operational problems and challenges, or enabling efficiency opportunities, basically from the bottom up. What can I do on the work floor to improve the way we work, and develop a solution around that? So with regards to the information or data, if you like, in the OT world, engineers talk about the information. In IT, we call it data. In the industry, this has been digital for decades, right? And we have had lots of it. All, of course, locked into silos in different systems, such as the functional design specification, P&IDs, the data from the PLCs and the SCADA systems, historians, simulation data, data from reliability-centered maintenance analysis, etc., has all been available, but in different applications and systems. And it is really the engineer today that understands the relationships between all these different data sources and puts it into the industrial context. You could call this human contextualization, which is basically the same as, previously we had to find our way and catch our bus. We needed to look at the map. We had to, look at the yellow pages, look at train tables, etc. Well, that's basically still what an engineer does, putting all this information together, understanding, the actual operations. And today, engineers and workers are using, half, maybe up to 80% of their time finding and getting access to the right information and understanding the context before they can really, look at solving problems or optimizing their operations. So from an operator perspective, the concept of digital twin has been, launched. And the way I look at and the operators and Cognite, when we talk about the digital twin, it's really all about putting the data in context of the industrial reality. Basically, all the relationships that an engineer knows between the P&IDs, the sensor data, the spare parts in their ERP system is now being defined in the data set itself. So it doesn't really matter where you start looking, the relationships, the understanding of how it is relevant for the context of your operations is defined in the data itself. So this then basically eliminates people spending time on, looking for the data and the information on a case-by-case basis. And it also really simplifies, the value outtake of data, and not least, let's say, solution development and operationalization of these digital solutions. Once you have your data available in context, this really accelerates both new but also known value opportunities and methodologies. Asset performance management or condition-based maintenance, manufacturing excellence, these are not new methodologies, approaches, or solutions for the industry, but they have been extremely complex to implement, particularly on brownfield sites. Being able to access data in a very simple way in context allows operators today to develop use cases on asset performance management, on manufacturing excellence, but also extend automation by closing the loop on larger business processes or workflows. It enables, remote and autonomous operations, the use of drones in inspections, predictive analytics, data sharing securely with suppliers and partners across operations. And it also enables digital innovation from the bottom up through ecosystems and partnerships. And really what the true value will be in the future, that this enables the true use of artificial intelligence and machine learning at scale. So the operators will still focus on the basic operational objectives, which have not changed, right? It's production loss, it's mechanical failures that cause process interruptions, it's safety, the cost of repairs, etc. These are the same KPIs that I've been focusing on for the last decades, and they are still relevant. And so these solutions will still focus on operational improvements. But now, obviously, with new opportunities, utilizing robotics, digital twins, 3D technologies with scanning, etc. So what does this mean for suppliers? And this question, every supplier really needs to answer this question in the context of their own business and their own operations. It's data-driven services, it's maybe applications or solutions for their customers to use, it's connected assets, risk management as a service, outcome-based contracts. And just look at what some of the other key players do in this industry. And there's two great examples I would like to reference, which are SKF and Alfa Laval. Both of them were part of our Ignite talks last week, and it was quite interesting to listen how the leadership in these companies are projecting the future. SKF is basically known as a bearing supplier, right? Which is a commodity, if you would like. However, SKF is transforming their business, not being a bearing supplier to their customers. They have established services. They are focusing on, the reliability of the equipment where their products are being used, and providing their customers with rotating equipment performance rather than a bearing. A very good example of how you can transition from delivering products to delivering outcomes for your customer operations. And Alfa Laval is, one of these clients of SKF, with thousands of bearings being used in the equipment that they again provide to their customers. And also Alfa Laval has been, implementing performance agreements with their clients where they focus on uptime and improving efficiency of the equipment that they provide. And also Alfa Laval sees that in the future, the services will be based on total performance contracts rather than transactional relationships and the sale of spare parts, for example. So the industry is transforming, and as Walter Wriston here from Citibank said in the 80s, already digitalization in the financial world made information about money as important, and maybe even today even more important as money itself. For equipment manufacturers, the aftermarket already accounts for the entire or a large part of the profit being generated by companies, and the services continuum is in place, right? I was looking for a metaphor to describe how services is evolving and how that impacts the relationship between a customer and a supplier. When I bought my first car, I just bought that car, right? And the car was the value itself. The services to that car were basically cost. When I bought my next car, I bought it through a dealership, and then it was offered with warranty. Basically, the service was a differentiation from how I procured my car previously. The next step in my journey as a car owner was leasing a car, right? Where I basically had a combined solution where the car itself and the services were combined and bundled in an offering. And now, I don't own a car anymore, but I utilize services such as mobility as a service. In Oslo, they have these city cars that I can use. I'll pay per minute. Or if a car is not necessarily, I can utilize these electrical scooters also based on a service fee. So the transition continuum of services from pure products to outcome and solutions is really the development and transition that we also see being enabled by these new digital technologies, the sharing of information, and entering different incentive-based agreements. So for the OEMs, the value drivers are clearly reducing warranty costs, reducing the cost of services, maintaining customer loyalty, but also increasing the revenue from aftermarket services and improve competitive differentiation. And a really added benefit, which is basically an upside, is that when you are connected to the equipment that is in the field, you collect a lot of data that can be used again to improve your products and raise the productivity of engineering. So some analysis clearly show that equipment makers are expecting that their share of revenue from services will be more than doubled in the next couple of years. Yeah, today it's about 20% of the services is based on advanced services models. where typical MRO spare parts sales is 80% of that. We expect that this will be a 50-50 share by 2024, where half of it will be based on advanced services models. The areas that the manufacturers will focus on are predictive maintenance, remote maintenance, and operational efficiency, but also customer portals, easy access to spare parts, basically, customer experience type of solutions. However, the industrial landscape is more complicated than how we were able to evolve in the consumer world. Customer infrastructure is very varied, even within a single account. Data, as we explained, is still locked into silos. Connectivity can be limited and have constraints, particularly on ships and in offshore, for example, with floating installations. The systems are different. Naming is non-standard and varies across assets. Security is obviously extremely important. And the data is difficult to structure, and that limits scalability. And also, clearly today, existing relationships, which are transactional, the business models and incentives are not aligned. This, of course, presents a number of challenges with developing digital services. First of all, the complexity of solution development. If you have to build one-to-one integrations, access to the data, this really, really limits what you can do. So data extractors and access to data through a unified layer with clean, quality-controlled, and contextualized data is important in order to solve this challenge. The cost of solutions development, traditionally using traditional methods of developing solutions, this can be extremely time-consuming. You need specific resources. It takes a long time. You need to implement, let's say, agile ways of working, utilize SDKs, low-code type of platforms, etc. Limited reusability is a challenge. You need something which is easy to replicate and can scale. You need the resources to develop it. So you need a way to work with third parties or partners. So they should be able to access your environment, your development environment in an easy way. You need, of course, a stable solution, and it needs to be maintained as well. Once you have developed, let's say, a digital solution, it requires also a life cycle management strategy. So you probably need some kind of environment where you can host and manage the life cycle of the application. As said earlier, particularly in oil and gas, but really across all industries, data security and trust with customers is really important. So you need to comply with security policies. You need to have methodologies and processes in place for data governance and data quality monitoring. Another central challenge is IT initiatives that you have inherit legacy initiatives both in your own operations and with customers. They're not flexible, they're not built for agility. Data is locked in, so you need to find a way to mitigate that by providing a full bilateral solution where you can interact with data lakes and data warehouses. And of course, the challenges of new business models, right? So how can you commercialize this? And clearly, a solution will require an element of monitoring and communicating the value creation that you provide with your services in the customer's operational context, because that allows you to charge a premium for what you do if you can document the value that you've created. And it allows you to develop KPIs that you can use to govern, let's say, these agreements. The real challenge that and value opportunity in itself that that we would like to see solved, and which is the consequence, right, of having these challenges, which is, you know, the limitations with scaling. And this has really been the challenge, right? That's why we have seen so many proof of concepts and pilot projects that have been successful, but not have been able to scale. So this illustration really shows what we would like to achieve, right? So we would like to develop that value opportunity with that customer, deliver that, and then super efficiently scale it across all assets. And once that infrastructure is in place, you want to use that opportunity to find new solutions and new areas where you can deliver on use cases and scale that in a similar way. So the key challenges that need to be addressed is the OT-IT data divide. Also, I would say the IT engineering and business divide, right? So engineers and IT people, they speak different languages and need to work together in developing the infrastructure and way of working in order to achieve this. Data structure and quality is important, and obviously to find the ability to scale and commercialize. So with this, I would like to hand over to Jake, who will go through the best practices and guiding principles.
Great, thanks, Sander. I think I'm really excited to share with you some of the things that we've observed in working together with some industrial companies in realizing these aftermarket services. Because yeah, there's a huge amount of complexity that industrial companies are faced with embarking on this journey. And I think it's a privilege that we have as Cognite to work with a number of different customers, and specifically in my team, to actually help to realize these technical solutions so that we can come back and share with you in a forum like this. So please ask questions as we go. I'll try and keep the message nice and simple, but with myself being a data scientist, that doesn't always happen. We'll dive in through 3 guiding principles that I'd like you to take away from this presentation. You can jump to the next slide, please, Ander, and we'll take the first one. And that's something that really rings true to agile approaches, but that's to actually span the very vast space that you need to cover as early and as quickly as possible. So what we recommend to you here is to pick a trusted customer or partner and take the full journey through. So that means establishing the data sharing agreements, the designing and developing a digital application together, and all the way through focusing on articulating exactly what your digital product is. Imagine how this looks, right? You need to encourage one of your customers to open up the data that's coming out of the operational environment so that you can work with it. And so to do that, you have to motivate what the digital product will look like. And collaboration is the only thing that really makes this possible. Focusing on this whole end-to-end journey really paints the picture a lot better than spending a year or two in trying to figure out the edge connectivity alone or the application platform alone. Take the whole thing end-to-end and launch as quickly as possible. Then on to the next slide, we have an example of one of our customers who is really succeeding with this. Framo, a marine pumping solutions provider, and Aker BP, an oil and gas operator, they observed an opportunity for working better together. And this is an example of that kind of partnership where together these companies have been able to build a new digital value offering together. So Framo previously was designing and commissioning seawater lift pumping systems for Aker BP. And what they've moved more towards here is a performance-based smart contract that's based on the KPIs of the pumping solution. So this is a large step for Framo towards providing pumping as a service, and the shared benefits of a streamlined collaboration are being realized by both Aker BP and Framo. We jump to the next slide. And I think this is how we work and how we help these kinds of engagements as Cognite. And the slide that I have up here is an example of the iterative approach that we adopt in most of our engagements. So we'll time box the iterations will help customers to understand exactly what the digital solution needs to do, and then we'll build that in an iterative, agile way, time boxing that and pivoting and adapting as needed, prioritizing value outtake the whole way. With that, onto the next guiding principle, and that's in working in this agile approach. Incremental value is what has to define and set the course. Very often in the last few years, we've seen a lot of attention and hype around the concept of machine learning powered predictive maintenance. But there really is a lot of value to be taken out of the simpler approaches that are enabled by just liberating the data itself. So if you take your digital product, you should map out a journey of increasing complexity that starts with realizing all of the value from simply connecting and making the data available and presented in rich diagnostic views, adding scalable and intelligent monitoring on top of that data, and then finally building intelligent approaches to prescribe the correct course of action. So you can see the very end of this tier is a solution that, for example, enables the operator of the equipment to be more autonomous on the diagnostics and corrective action on the equipment. This is really important because we've seen some customers aim straight for machine learning as the ambition and not really think about how that fits into the evolution of the digital product. Best thing is to build out what you know you need, because at each step of the way, you're laying a foundation for the analytics that you'll build in the end. So for example, when you do eventually develop a machine learning model, that model will then be served in the context of rich diagnostic tools and reliable monitoring solutions. Onto the next slide, we have a customer example. If you could jump forward, please, Zander, thank you. And that's with MH Worth, a drilling solutions provider, who in this case collaborated with an offshore drilling contractor on increasing the reliability and the availability of their top drive systems. So first thing, of course, is to connect the data from the top drive system and structure that into a place where you can do the analytics. MH Worth were then able to deliver analytics, and this they did in Statistica and Spotfire, and they were able to trend and build diagnostic views around the performance and operations of the top drive systems. But really, the most obvious value that came to light in doing this was how it could easily accelerate the time to do the reclassification of the equipment. And so that was even an additional party into the collaboration, where D&V was then able to reclassify the equipment much, much more quickly because they had insights into the historical data and operation of the top drive. So that led to a reduction in the number of overhauls and a very, very concrete case of extended useful life and realized predictive maintenance. The important things to note here is that this was a very, very simple value outtake that was made available just by connecting the data and having an open collaborative discussion between different parties in the equipment value chain. And that brings us onto the next slide with the third and final guiding principle. And from my side, as more of a technology-focused individual, I see this as a fantastic opportunity for industrial customers to leapfrog the technology journey by leveraging managed services. So for an industrial company to become an application development shop overnight is a bit of an impossible task. What you normally need to solve to do that is all of the things that we have on the slide here, where there's a huge amount of effort required to structure the data, to create a model deployment and hosting environment, to connect the machine learning models to streaming data, to build an application hosting platform, to solve security, authorization, graphing. All of these problems add up. And what we've seen is that customers who try to do this alone are left with very little time to iterate and improve on the actual solution to the business problem, the use case, right? And so the distribution of time is actually slanted in the wrong direction. And when going after these things, you probably will have to set up a huge IT organization and a new skills and a new IT department to actually manage these applications. But this is where managed services come into play. And if you jump to the next slide, the managed services take all of these software engineering problems, you could say, and condense them down into pre-configured managed solutions. So that kind of reduces the barrier to become digital as an industrial company. And leveraging these kinds of technologies, such as Cognite, really enable you to jump ahead, and it makes it feasible for an industrial company to develop and own and manage and resell digital software solutions. On the next slide, we have an example of one of our customers that I believe has truly succeeded in this, and that's Operationalization, a specialist machining company that's based out of Stavanger. They have a fleet of CNC cutting machines, and they're machining very, very specialized and complex parts for the oil and gas and other industries. Now, Operationalization is not a massive company, and they definitely don't have a massive IT department. Yet, by leveraging managed services for the data and the development of applications, they've been able to very, very quickly, and when I say quickly, this is 1 to 3 months, they've been able to build new analytics and new visual tools to support their operations. And that goes from dashboards through to 3D applications that are able to show a new view of the operations and the process data. And even in the extreme case, Operationalization is now independently building their own dashboards with low-code solutions. So these are actually the operators who are configuring things in Grafana and OutSystems to create their own workflows based on their own data. And that's truly exciting to see. So then on to the final slide to recap then. So 3 quite simple guidelines and things to keep in mind as you set out or continue on your journey towards realizing these services. And that truly is to span the space with someone you trust, to set a course for the development of your digital project that will show incremental value on the way through, and to celebrate the fact that you are able to leapfrog from a technology perspective and go straight to modern cloud approaches, which are much, much lighter on skills, resources, and to both develop and operate these solutions. So how do we do as Cognite? To bring it back to our contribution to the space and how we work, if you go to the next slide, Zander. And this is our take. These are the managed services that we provide as Cognite that support our customers to realize these digital solutions. So our platform provides the contextualized data. We solve the problem of streaming the data into a format that's meaningful for scalable applications. The kinds of formats that let you build an app that can run for thousands and hundreds of thousands of compressors, pumps, valves, and other equipment. Our application development toolbox and machine learning toolbox enable simpler development of these kinds of attributes of the applications. And secure data sharing, of course, really simplifies all of the complex discussions that you will need to have with your customers on data access control. Those are all provided as managed services, which will allow you to really focus on your own business and your own business proposal, which we, of course, also support with advisory services. But ultimately, it's your business product that we would like to help you to build and launch to the market. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Zander, for final word, and then into Q&A.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jake. So, so it's basically all about the value for customers. Include them in your development journey, finding the right partners, work agile. An acknowledgement basically that the disruption will redefine existing and traditional interfaces, right, in the value chain. And this is something, so this is not a journey you can do alone. And I guess another takeaway I see is that solutions are really being developed from the bottom up, focusing on on user stories and very specific value opportunities. So thank you, Jake. I think now we can answer some questions. I'm just looking into the questions being answered here right now. Okay, so here is a question. We are already working with another cloud IoT technology provider. Does Cognite provide a competitive or complementary solution? Jake, do you want to try to give that an answer? Or shall I?
I think that's a good question, especially in the light of all the examples of collaboration that we've shown so far. Yes, I think the technology landscape is as complex as the operator and equipment landscape. And of course, Cognite integrates with all different platforms and providers. We've done this in the past, we'll continue to do it in the future. And I think where we really focus is in simplifying the development of these digital solutions and making that quicker, better, and faster. So we often do different architectures of how we fit into existing programs. I think the best thing is to reach out and we can discuss how we can reconcile that and come up with an architecture that can work for your organization.
Yes. So complementary, basically, right? We integrate with all these existing data warehouse, data lake type of systems, and actually we like it, right? Because it simplifies, integration. So another question here, and I guess I can try to answer that. Our customers are not willing to pay for extra instrumentation or services. So how can such a business model work? Right. Yeah. So this is a question, we hear a lot, and of course, when your customers are looking to cut cost and you propose an investment, it is not a really good starting point, to come to some kind of agreement. So the key, obviously, is to, as Jake also said, right, in the development of these solutions, it's about focusing on value and outcome. So you need to talk to your customers about their specific operational challenges, right? So what are the pains that they are experiencing? What is the day-to-day experience of the users? And basically avoid maybe talking about these products initially. So once identifying the value that you can create, the products and services will just be an enabler for that specific value opportunity. And of course, it does require, a different way of drafting agreements. So this needs to be part of the dialogue. Okay, so where is the value, and how can we deliver solutions that create that value? And then, I guess, which I also said in my introduction, it is really, really important to be able to measure that value that you create with your services in the context of the customer operations, right? So if you have a digital product, hardware, software, and services that help, increase the uptime of specific equipment, it's going to be crucial to measure that uptime improvement and use that KPI to govern, let's say, the agreements between you and your customer.
Yeah, a fantastic question, that one as well, around the sensors, right? Because you can't expect the edge itself to be homogeneous and across all of the deployments of your equipment. That's really the importance of having this contextualization layer that's able to map all of the different sensors at the edge into one kind of consistent representation that you can then fit into your machine learning models. I think whenever I hear a data scientist say, oh, we didn't have the sensors that we needed for the model to work, or we didn't have enough data, I tend to challenge that and say, well, it's always going to be that way. And the models that you build and the applications that you develop need to have this contextualization that maps all the different edge configurations into the same application.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, another question here. We can try to answer that together as well, I guess, Jake. I mean, data is often difficult to access. There are older systems, etc. How do your clients solve this? Yeah, this is of course also real world type of challenge, right? I mean, you have an older DCS somewhere. I mean, there's all these different. We talked about that in our introduction where we talked about these different challenges. So this is an area that is developing, of course, very rapidly, right? So Cognite, offers a wide range of data extraction tools, to get data out of, the most common control systems, the most common ERP systems, historians, etc. Interacting with, AutoCAD drawings for P&IDs, etc. But also many OEMs are offering and are developing or deploying their own gateway solutions. So basically a little piece of hardware with connectivity that's being mounted on the equipment that allows for streaming of that data. But I think also the development, you also have to pay attention to the development within, your customers' organization. We see that, many of the operators are actually focusing themselves on extracting the data from these source systems, and are ingesting that into their data lakes or data warehouses. And this, of course, going forward in the future will make getting access to that data much easier, through, let's say, cloud to cloud type of integrations. So, here there is many different ways to solve it, and from our point of view, that is really not the challenge that needs to be solved. What do you think, Jake? Anything to add from your perspective?
Data access, it's something that needs to be built up, right? And it won't solve itself. I think a determined strategy, and that's really around the incremental value, is prioritizing solutions that will improve your access to data are really the easiest and the most important things to start with, because those will ultimately be what your future digital projects will be based on.
All right. I would like to basically thank everybody who attended, and of course, thanks to you, Jake, for being here together with us today and sharing your insights. Yeah, to the attendees, remember to visit cognite.com, and also our Ignite talks. I would highly recommend to have a look at the Ignite talk that our Paula Doyle had with both SKF and Alfa Laval, where you can get some great insights how key OEMs are approaching this. And reach out to us if you would like a demo, or just basically want to talk to us and get some advice on how to approach this. So thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.